first book that I've had any kind of contact with the author throughout the process of illustrating it. When I illustrated Dilby, I did email with Florence a little. She was kind of a hero of mine since I was a kid. I was just really super excited to have her email address. And she had worked with Edward Gorey, and I got her to kind of talk to me about what it was like working with him, and that was great. But she wasn't really involved once I got going on the book. And all the other books I've worked on, I think the normal model is more like an illustrator is given a manuscript, and there isn't really an invitation or any encouragement to offer feedback on the manuscript. And then there isn't also a lot of encouragement or invitation for the author necessarily to offer a lot of feedback on the illustration. And in at least a couple of cases, the author who had illustrated the book, or written the book I was illustrating, didn't actually see the illustrations until they were completely done. So that's always seems kind of funny to me. On the other hand, we collaborated on this book around the clock. Like, woke up talking about it in the morning, went to bed talking about it at night, changed things at the last minute, like the garb of the coyotes, and et cetera, and working on it all the time. It was sometimes really easy and natural and wonderful. I think the reason why we are collaborating is because I think we're sort of natural collaborators. We have a lot of interests in common and a lot of things we both love. And there's a certain telepathy, I think, that goes along with being married that makes us able to sort of sense what I would like to illustrate and what he's picturing when he's writing. But we had a lot of hard times, too.
This is a hard time.
This is a hard time.
And you might not think it. So this was an early color sketch that Carson had done of the coyotes.
I would interject to say that these woods, Forest Park, it's a place very close to my heart. I spend a lot of time there. And it's also a very difficult place to draw. It's very busy. There's a plant everywhere you look. It's verdant and lush and incredibly green. And I don't really use green in my art. Kind of more of like a dusty, neutral palette kind of artist. So I didn't know how to draw this place that I loved so much that we were setting a whole book in. So this was my first stab at it.
And I came up and I was like, it's too green.
And I was like, oh, really?
Yeah. and so Carson toned it down quite a bit. and pretty much emptied it out. But
these were to kind of follow his expectations. He was like, I like the stuff you do, just want to make it space, and the palette is more neutral, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what I came up with. And I was like, that doesn't feel right to me.
I think you were saying that it felt like something you'd been doing a lot and you were kind of sick of it and ready to move on.
That's true.
So that was the sort of the happy medium, and that actually became one of the kind of the medium of the entire book.
Yeah, this was a pivotal illustration because it was like I finally had a sense of what the coyotes would look like, and more importantly, I finally had a sense of what the woods would look like, the palette, the shape of them, like how busy they would be, like what medium I would be using. It was a real turning point. Not that this illustration is in the book either, it's still just a color sketch. Those three color sketches are probably like 25 hours of work combined.
She's not bitter.
But I'm not bitter.
And this is a badger with a rickshaw. and we have this up here because this is another example of the benefits of collaboration. And this is actually a scene that is totally inconsequential to the book. A badger in a rickshaw, this is not giving away anything. A badger in a rickshaw shows up and gives Prue a ride. And the editor actually got to that point and was like, let's kill the badger in the rickshaw. It doesn't need to be in there.
Pretty long book. Maybe you don't need a
Maybe you lose that part. But I refused, and principally because the only reason I wrote the badger in the rickshaw, I think it came to me because I knew that Carson would love to draw it. And it would look awesome as a Carson illustration. So there was almost something kind of, I just wanted to see the thing. It was sort of greedy, I wanted to see the thing come to life. And so Carson did, she drew it, and we fought for it, and it stayed in the book. And there's the badger in the rickshaw. And coming near the end here, you know, as we finished the book and all the illustrations were turned in, we were very clear with our publisher from the very beginning that we wanted the physical object of this book to be something incredible and something special and something that you would treasure. And this, again, going back to our own childhood, had to do with just loving books, pieces, and sitting them and poring over them and flipping through the pages and feeling the pages and really reading the illustrations. That's actually an early reader of the book. And we really wanted the things... What? An early reader of the book?
Oh, I thought you meant like an arc.
No.
Sorry.
And so we're like down to paper quality. There's tip-ins. There's 6 color tip-ins, which is on a glossy paper. It felt kind of a plastic feel. You know, we spent a lot of time just kind of agonizing over the various aesthetics. And there's some nice mattes. We wanted to be very matte heavy. And because we wanted people to read the book itself. And now I'll take a little digression and say that while I realize that Kindles and Nooks and Kobos and whatever are very, very important, and they're great, and they're awesome, and you can take them on planes, you can have your whole library in your hand when you use them, and you can get a book, you know, in 10 seconds. But I would just say that that's not the best technology for coming to this book. That in fact, the book itself is really the best technology to read this book by. And we would hope, you can read it if you want to, but you should get the book if you really want to have the full experience. That's the intended thing. So, come to the end, to the moral of the story. And that's fairly simple. I guess a big question is, you know, why write a book for kids? And explicitly, why write a middle grade novel? And for those of you who don't know, middle grade is 8 to 12 years old. And it's been set down by the publishers and the publishing community as that's what a middle grade novel is. And while that seems kind of arbitrary, and hopefully anybody would read this book, I actually don't mind that designation, because I actually think that kids 8 to 12 years old are the perfect people to be reaching with this kind of book. And that's really just based on Carson and my own experience as kids. And loving books, but also reaching that age where you still have that incredible childlike imagination, and yet you're sort of, I think I'm actually receiving a Piers Anthony book but you're able to take on, you know, big books and bigger ideas. You're developmentally able to kind of understand more complex ideas, and all before you're sort of dropped into the cynicism of adolescence and adulthood. I think it's an incredible, magical window, and it is a time for me, in my memory, that I recall as being an incredibly fertile time, imaginatively, and I feel like it's something that age is something that I'm drawing from to this day, not only with writing Wildwood, but also in writing December songs. I think tapping into that part of my life is an important part of my creative process. And to close, I would just say that I do hope that kids will read this book, and I hope the intended effect, if there is an intended effect, would be that they would see Forest Park if they live in Portland, or if they don't, see a map of it, or discover their own city park, and have that inspiration and imagination to kind of explore an enchanted country of their own making. Thanks very much. Before we do the signing, we'll take some questions.
foot, though. You did a great job. That's practice for later. So you have a question, come on up here, and we'll get Colin or Carson to answer.
We did cover a lot of ground. Oh, here we go.
How many times did you read it when you were revising it after you actually decided this is how it's going to be? Like, when you were revising it, how many times did you read it before you decided, I'm not revising it anymore?
That's a really good question. I think when I was your age, I thought people just wrote it and sent it off. And I think I may have believed that up to the point where I had my first talk with my editor. I don't know how many times I read it. I read it a lot. I read it many times. I think that there was probably 5 revisions, and even the minor revisions, once you're getting down to the end, you've done your 5th revision and all you're changing is a few sentences, a few paragraphs here and there. You still have to go back and read it all the way through from the start to finish to make sure that it all jives. It's much easier on a record. It's a similar process on a record where you're kind of moving songs around, but at least that, with a record, it takes you 40 minutes to listen to it, start to finish, whereas it's a day-long process to read a book like this. But yeah, so probably 5 or 6 times, I think. That's a good question, I think.
So I know that December has just got off a tour, but I know that Carson and Hank were with you. I know personally, because I saw you at the Ryman last month. But how does being on a book tour compare to being on tour with a band?
Well, I have something to do here.
Yeah.
I'm not just a hanger-on, like moving on a tour bus with the band and running around with my friends. This definitely feels more my element.
And sort of, I mean, rock tour. The thing about rock tour, and my friend Wesley Stace, who also is a musician under the name John Wesley Harding, told me that with a rock tour you can only go as fast as your gear goes. There's a tremendous amount of setting up and tearing down, and lots of people and parts to move around. Whereas with a book tour, you can go as fast as you and your book can travel. And so there's a lot of publishers being like, what's your excuse? We can fly you there, why don't you do it? So while they tend to be shorter, I think, while this is only our 2nd event doing anything for this book, so we haven't really jumped into it all the way, but I expect that that'll be the case. I'll have to see which is better.
Colin, your lyrics have a very narrative quality to them. I've always thought over the years. Is a novel something that you've always thought about doing? It seems like your songs lend itself to that, and I was curious if that's something you've thought about for a long time getting into.
No, my degree is in creative writing, actually. But I really, once I had finished school, kind of didn't want to have anything to do with writing. I think I left my writing program, my undergraduate writing program, and was taking my time off, and getting life experience. And before I went back for my MFA, I started doing band stuff. And I think I was a little bit disillusioned. And so for the longest time, I did not set pen to paper except to write, the occasional email blast for the Decemberists or something like that. And I think I just needed that time away. That said, they are so different from one another. When I did finally come back to it, I feel like the time I had spent writing songs informed what I was doing and not. It really depends. You can write a song as long as it takes to listen to a song. miraculously. You can write a song in 5 minutes, I can tell you that. And it's kind of an incredible thing. But you can also take months and months to write one. At least with writing a book, you kind of feel like you're doing something productive, whereas songwriting can often just be you sitting on the couch, strumming your guitar, staring into space, which doesn't feel very productive. Whereas writing a book feels like full employment. That answer your question?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to stop here and say, we will take the 5 people who are here. So, go.
So, I understand your sister, Miley, has a book coming out in October called The Apothecary, and I was wondering how you both happen to have a children's book coming out, a military children's book coming out this fall, and if anything in your growing up experience had anything to do with that.
Well, Miley was always really private about her creative pursuits. I was more of an exhibitionist. I was the one who would, sit at the kitchen table and read my short stories to everybody and have everybody chime in. I didn't even know Miley was a writer until college, and she surprised everybody. All of a sudden here she was in the New Yorker, which was kind of a surprise to everyone. So, honestly, it's kind of funny. She kind of keeps her cards close to her chest, even though we talk often. And as I was writing this, I felt like I was kind of stepping into her territory, so I wasn't saying anything about it until we were going to meet publishers, and I mentioned to my dad that I was working on this, and he said, "Oh, Miley's doing that too." And it turns out that she was writing a middle grade novel as well, and it was coming out near the same time, so it's random serendipity. And I was kind of worried at first. I thought that she was going to equate it to me like stealing her Depeche Mode tapes. Which I know that there's some issues there. But I think she's cool. I think she's alright with it.
Hello, I'm Sophia. Big fan of December's, by the way. Super cool. But my question is actually for both of you. What is it like you have this children's book, and it's super fun and super cool, but what is it like having a son and having a children's book, and at some point you might be reading this and going, man, you came up with this, this is so cool. What is it like? Because some children's writers don't have children, so just for me it was kind of interesting, like seeing this book and going, hey, they have kids. Our son is like the weirdest 5-year-old ever, right? He's very, he's 5 and he's a really early reader. He's a voracious reader, and he has read Wildwood. He's had it read to him, and he's read it. I guess it's okay to say he has Asperger's, our son Hank. So he's just kind of unusual. He's amazing. He's very smart and adorable, but very, very different. And I kind of feel like I can only speak to my own parenting experience. Like, it feels like it's probably so different than the parenting experience of someone with any other 5-year-old. But it's neat to think that we've written this book that he loves so much. Quite frankly, he seems totally unfazed by the fact that we've written it. He's like, I love Wildwood, I love Star Wars, I love the never-ending story. And I don't get the sense that he's just so unfazed by it all. He's equally unfazed by seeing Colin on stage. He's like, there's Dad.
Yeah. On his own, he has sort of a unique grasp on reality. The autistic brain is incredible and it's astounding, and it's very different in ways from our own. And so I'm not even sure how he would even grasp. I think he just assumes that everybody's parents writes books and plays and bands, and how boring, And so I'm not sure. We'll see how he comes along, and if he ever ends up being impressed by it. But he doesn't like the Decemberists. He likes classical music. Every time we try to turn on any other kind of music, he wants Bach and it's great. He's our best audience, and I think he understands it pretty well.
And I think he was, I mean, just seeing his imagination at work, which is a really overwhelmingly overactive, impressive imagination. I think it like even puts ours to shame. And it's pretty inspiring. It's pretty wonderful and inspiring. And I feel like a lot of the story was inspired by the things that interested him, whether or not he cares, and a lot of the illustrations. Certainly a lot of the maps in the book had a lot to do with him because he adores maps. He will pore over maps forever. So we threw a lot of them in there both because we love them and also to appease him.
I just want to say I'm a third grade teacher and I can't wait to dive into your book and share it with my kids.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah. Let me ask you, when looking at your very, very charming picture of the actual rickshaw, and then hearing you say that your editor had said to you, how do you draw the line, or is there a line drawn between an editor's interference and helpfulness? I got my feelings hurt when they said, this is my book, back off.
That's a really good question. I think that's something I'm still trying to discover. I'm sure any writer here who's had the editorial experience thrust upon them will understand that it is a constant battle of questioning whether or not they're right or they're wrong, who's right and who's wrong. And I think it was a really good experience. I think it was just a question of I know going forward I have to learn exactly what's most important to me and to really stand my ground on it. But also recognize her as an objective reader, the effort that she's making to really make it a better book and to listen and to apply where I agree. Again, it's a really interesting relationship.
Yeah, I would say I'm a bunch of books into this now, and I get a little bit better at knowing. I get a little bit better at not bristling every time I'm given any kind of creative criticism or feedback, and also being more autonomous, and I think this was Colin's first book, and that was a really hard thing to kind of get a sense of, to know when it's like, no, I feel strongly about this is the way this is meant to be, or hey, I'm kind of new to this, and I'm getting advice from someone who's quite a professional. This is what she does for a living. I think it was kind of a hard dynamic for all of us, but by the end of the book, I think we had a pretty good sense.
But then there's some point where you're like, does she want me to do that because of marketing, where you start distrusting the motives, whether or not you're trying to make it a better book or a more palatable book.
Or more saleable.
More saleable book. And that's...
You deal with that with the record company as well.
Yeah, but for whatever reason, in December, we can do whatever we want. We're kind of the weird stepchild in the record label. And so that's all right. We're not there with Wildwood, unfortunately.
My question is for Carson. You did mention Maurice Sendak a couple times. I was wondering your inspirations have been in children's literature and also in illustration. Both then and now.
That's an awesome question. So Maurice Sendak, there's like any living kids book illustrator that is not inspired by that guy. He's like the godfather. Also, some other living greats, I think Tommy Younger, Alice Robinson, and her late husband Martin Robinson were big heroes of mine. Ben Shawn, who ostensibly wasn't, I think he illustrated one kid's book, but he did do a lot of illustration and fine art back in the 30s. He's a real hero of mine. And Pauline Baines. Do you guys know who Pauline Baines is? I mentioned her before, but it always breaks my heart that people